From the diary of Gefreiter Karl Vogel, Erste Kompanie, Schutztruppe Südwestafrika, Windhoek in the Kaiser's Colony, July 1904. Dust is everywhere, in my hair, in my clothes, in the food we eat. The sun burns my neck, and at night the hills seem to press down on the camp. The men joke to keep their spirits up, but I can't shake this restless feeling. Tomorrow we march again, farther into the desert, for the Nama and Herero have risen against us. I do not know what awaits us, or if I will ever see this place again. Imagine a piece of Germany transplanted to the deserts of southern Africa. Thousands of miles from Berlin, in a land of red earth and endless skies, echoes of a vanished empire remain. German street names line the sidewalks of Windhoek. Colonial buildings rise against the sun-bleached horizon, and each October, bratwurst and beer flow freely. This is Namibia, but once it was German Southwest Africa. In this video, we'll explore how this unlikely colony came to be, the legacy it left behind, and how a brief chapter in imperial history carved deep and lasting lines into the story of a nation. European contact with Southwest Africa began in 1486, when the Portuguese explorer Diogo Cao, under orders from King John II, landed at Cape Cross. For centuries, however, European settlement remained sparse and temporary. Then, in 1840, the London Missionary Society handed its work in Southwest Africa over to the German Rhenish Missionary Society. At that time, there was no unified Germany. That wouldn't come until 1871, so German missionaries were independent Lutheran evangelists, not agents of the state. Their mission was to spread Christianity, teach literacy, and build schools and churches. Yet, though not by design, their presence played a crucial role in paving the way for imperial settlement. They created permanent German-speaking communities, opened trading links, and often mediated local disputes. Who were these missionary pioneers? Among them was Heinrich Schmelen, who founded several mission stations, focusing on education and Bible translation. Franz Heinrich Kleinschmidt joined him, documenting the Nama language while teaching at these stations. Further north, Carl Hugo Hahn expanded into Herero territory, training pastors, mediating conflicts, and building trading networks. The work of these men merits a video of its own, and it may well get one later in the series. Many German mission stations were established during this period, decades before German Southwest Africa became an imperial enterprise. Betania was one of the earliest, founded in 1814, and later taken over by the Rhenish mission. Otjimbingwe was founded in 1849, and later became the headquarters of the Rhenish mission in Namibia. It eventually served as the colonial capital of German Southwest Africa. At the time, this land was not called Namibia. It was home to the Nama, Herero, Damara and San peoples, each with their own territories and traditions. The region was a patchwork of grazing lands, trade routes and communities, shaped by African societies and early German missionaries, but not yet by colonial rule. Back in Germany, missionaries' reports portrayed the region as a land of opportunity, already touched by German presence, and therefore a natural candidate for settlement. By the 1880s, their groundwork made the territory seem familiar and accessible to merchants like Adolf Luderitz, whose ventures would soon set the stage for Berlin's formal declaration of a protectorate. Without decades of Rhenish activity, Germany's territorial claims on the region would have lacked precedent and infrastructure. The missionaries didn't cause colonization, but they laid the groundwork, planting Germany's first communities in southern Africa, creating a deep cultural footprint and making the idea of a colony feel both possible and justified. What began as scattered mission stations and trading posts soon caught the attention of German merchants and adventurers, who transformed this religious foothold into the foundation for empire. By the 1870s and 1880s, German merchants and farmers began arriving, setting up trading posts and farms. In May 1883, Luderitz purchased the anchorage at Angra Pakena and 8 kilometres of surrounding land from Captain Joseph Fredericks II of Britannia, a local chief. The sale price? £100 in gold and 200 rifles. Just 3 months later, Fredericks sold Luderitz a much larger stretch, 140 kilometres between the Orange River and the Angra Pakena, for £500 and 60 rifles. Luderitz named his acquisitions Luderitzland, and then, crucially, appealed to German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck for protection of his commercial interests. Despite his initial reservations, particularly about maintaining good relations with Britain, Bismarck agreed. His vision was for German capitalism to drive German imperialism in Africa. But not all was as it seemed. Captain Fredericks later felt swindled, and with reason. The land contracts were written in German geographical miles, nearly 5 times larger than the English mile he was familiar with. He had unwittingly signed away far more territory than intended. When he realized the scale of his loss, he tried to lodge a complaint with the German government, but Imperial Commissioner Gustav Nachtigall, tasked by Bismarck with advancing German claims in West Africa, died suddenly at sea before the protest ever reached Berlin. So in April 1884, Luderitzland was placed under the protection of the German Empire. Officially it was not called a colony. For diplomatic reasons it was a Schutzgebiet, or protected territory. With Berlin's approval and no objection from Britain, the German Navy arrived, and on August 7, 1884, the German imperial flag was raised over southwest Africa. The town of Luderitz was later named in honour of Adolf Luderitz, who drowned on an expedition to the Orange River in 1886. Meanwhile, the great powers of Europe gathered in Berlin in late 1884 to divide the continent among themselves. Germany, having watched Britain and France seize territory after territory, was eager to claim its own place in the sun under Bismarck's leadership. The Treaty of Berlin confirmed Germany's claim to southwest Africa among the European colonial powers. Germany had arrived late to the so-called scramble for Africa, but was determined to catch up. With its flag planted, the German Empire began to leave its mark on the territory. Railways were built through sand and scrub, telegraph lines laid, and towns like Swakopmund and Windhoek founded. What had begun as mission stations and trading posts quickly grew into forts, settlements, and a colonial administration. For Bismarck, the territory was a geographical asset. For German settlers, it was a land of opportunity. Architecture from Bavaria and Berlin rose between the desert dunes. Lutheran churches and German schools took root. Settlers were encouraged to migrate. Farmers, artisans, soldiers, all promised a new life in the African sun. For the indigenous people, however, it was the start of something far more uncertain. In 1885, the German Colonial Society for Southwest Africa was formed, backed by bankers, industrialists and politicians. In the years that followed, discoveries of diamonds, copper and other minerals brought wealth to the colony. Also in 1885, Germany appointed Heinrich Ernst Goering, father of Hermann Goering, as the first Reich Kommissar for German Southwest Africa. His role was to represent German authority, negotiate treaties with local leaders, and oversee the colony's early administration. He introduced a dual legal system, one for Europeans, another for Africans, and as settlers and farmers pushed further inland, relations with indigenous peoples steadily deteriorated. To enforce control, in 1888, Germany sent German colonial troops called Schutztruppen. Known for their strict discipline, they played a key role in maintaining order and suppressing uprisings. In 1890, Germany declared the area a crown colony and expanded significantly into the interior through acquisition of the Caprivi Strip, an arrangement ratified by the Heligoland-Zanzibar Treaty with Britain. The South West Africa Company followed, established by German, British and Cape Colony interests to develop mineral mining, chiefly through the Otavi Mining and Railway Company. The Otavi Railway, built on a narrow-gauge track across challenging desert terrain, was a remarkable engineering achievement, constructed primarily to transport copper from the mines to the ports. By the late 1890s, Germany had built the Red Line fence to control livestock disease, a barrier that remains in place today. It also marked a deeper divide: direct German rule in the south, indirect rule in the north, shaping very different futures for groups like the Herero and Ovambo. Over the next 2 decades, as German farms expanded, the land available to the Herero, Nama and other groups shrank. Traditional grazing routes were blocked and water sources came under strict control. Tensions inevitably rose. The Herero and Nama, cattle herders and warriors with deep ties to the land, resisted German encroachment, setting the stage for violent conflict. German Governor Theodor Lutwein sought to keep the peace through negotiation. He met with Herero chief Samuel Maharero, striking treaties that promised cooperation. For a time, these agreements reduced conflict and gave the impression of partnership, but beneath the surface they eroded Herero independence, transferring land and power to German settlers. By 1904, trust had collapsed. Maharero turned against the Germans, sparking the Herero uprising, attacking German outposts and reclaiming lost land. Months later, the Nama joined the uprising. The German response was swift and brutal. Kaiser Wilhelm dispatched General Lothar von Trotha to crush the rebellion. His tactics marked a sombre chapter in German imperial history. Von Trotha issued an extermination order. All Herero, armed or unarmed, were to be driven into the desert and left to die. Wells were poisoned, and watering holes were guarded. Thousands perished from thirst and starvation. Shark Island, off the coast of present-day Namibia, was used as a concentration camp by German colonial authorities. Herero and Nama prisoners faced brutal conditions, including forced labour, inadequate food and disease. The camp had a high mortality rate and remains a key site in the history of German colonial administration in southwest Africa. Who were the other key protagonists in the military conflict? Victor Franke was a senior German officer who commanded troops during the uprisings. He oversaw military operations in the northern regions and coordinated with forces suppressing resistance. His role was central to Germany's efforts to maintain control over the colony. Hendrik Witbooi led Nama resistance. He organised military campaigns, negotiated with other local leaders, and became a symbol of Nama resistance. He eventually fled into exile in Bechuanaland, where he died in 1905. As mentioned, Samuel Maharero was the paramount chief of the Herero during the uprisings, coordinating military strategies and organising his people against German campaigns. He was killed in combat in 1905 and remains a key figure in the history of Namibian resistance to colonial rule. And Jacob Marenga managed to secure an alliance between Nama and Herero forces. His tactical skill on the battlefield drew praise even from German commanders, leading to his nickname of the Black Napoleon. Friedrich von Lindequist became governor of German Southwest Africa in 1905 during the ongoing uprisings. He focused on restoring administration, reorganising the Schutztruppe and consolidating German control over the colony. Between 1904 and 1908, when resistance ended, it's believed that up to 80% of the Herero and half of the Nama people were wiped out. In May 2021, Germany officially acknowledged its role in the conflict, recognising its atrocities as genocide. Germany pledged €1.1 billion over 30 years for development projects in Namibia, focusing on infrastructure, land reform and vocational training. The agreement, however, avoided using the terms reparations or compensation, framing the funds as a gesture of recognition rather than legal restitution. By this time, Namibia had already begun to grapple with the legacy of its colonial past. Monuments to German soldiers continued to be removed, including the Reiterdenkmal in Windhoek, a once proud statue of a colonial cavalryman, which was taken down in 2013. Despite re-establishing control over Southwest Africa in 1908, Germany's hold on the colony would not last. During World War I, German Southwest Africa was invaded in 1915 by South African forces aligned with the British. Several former Boer commanders, led by Louis Botha and Defence Minister Jan Smuts, brought experience from the Anglo-Boer War to the campaign. By 1915, Windhoek had fallen. In 1919, under the Treaty of Versailles, Germany lost all its overseas colonies. Yet many German settlers remained, weaving their lives into the fabric of the land. In 1920, German Southwest Africa was placed under South African administration as a League of Nations mandate. South Africa maintained control over the territory, applying its own laws and policies, including apartheid from 1948, while international disputes over the region's status continued. Namibia eventually gained independence in 1990 through a UN-supervised transition, following the Border War, or Namibian War of Independence, from 1966 to 1989, which saw a protracted conflict between the South African Defence Force and SWAPO guerrillas. If you'd like more content on Namibia, do let me know in the comments. Yet, over a century after Germany lost its colony in the African desert, German influence in Namibia endures, visible in timber-framed buildings, Lutheran churches, and cobblestone streets. Many settlements bear witness to this legacy. The coastal town of Lüderitz carries a distinct German charm. Founded, as we've seen, during the colonial era, it still reflects its past through Art Nouveau buildings, old churches, and street names echoing its European roots. Walking through Lüderitz feels like stepping into a piece of Germany transplanted to Africa, complete with traditional bakeries, German cuisine, and colonial architecture set against the Atlantic Ocean. This unique blend of cultures makes Lüderitz both historically rich and visually striking. Moving along the coast, we find Swakopmund. Perched between the Namib Desert and the Atlantic Ocean, it's often called Namibia's most German-influenced town. Walk its streets and you could almost mistake it for Bavaria, until the desert wind reminds you this is Africa. Founded in 1892, it still bears striking reminders of its European past. Ornate German architecture blends seamlessly with Namibia's natural beauty, where desert dunes meet the ocean. Then we come to Windhoek, Namibia's capital, a vibrant blend of African spirit and German heritage. Established during the colonial period, the city still showcases German influences in its architecture, from the iconic Christ Church to elegant old buildings lining its streets. German bakeries, breweries, and festivals add a European flavour, while bustling markets, modern malls, and local art bring a distinctly Namibian energy. Then there's Otjiwarongo, located in the heart of Namibia, known for its relaxed atmosphere and strong ties to both German and Afrikaner influences. German settlers left their mark with tidy streets, colonial-style buildings, and a farming culture that continues to this day. Karabib, a small town in central Namibia, may be modest in size but carries strong echoes of its German colonial past. Founded as a settlement along the railway, it became known for its marble quarries, which still supply stone worldwide. Across Namibia, the German language is still very much alive. It's spoken, taught and featured in the media, including the Namibia Broadcasting Corporation. And the newspaper Allgemeine Zeitung, or AZ, in circulation since 1916, is the only German-language daily in Africa. Oktoberfest is celebrated, even in the deserts, and names like Müller, Schneider and Krauser remain part of everyday Namibian life. The story of German Southwest Africa is not just one of colonizers and the colonized. It's the story of a legacy that endures, shaped every day by Namibia's communities. For some, these traditions are cherished heritage. For others, they are reminders of a painful past. But on this, everyone can agree. More than a century after the empire fell, a piece of Germany still lingers in the deserts of southern Africa, in the language people speak, in the buildings they walk past, and in memories that will not fade. As for Gefreiter Karl Vogel, he made it back to Windhoek from the desert, though what he encountered there isn't recorded. Perhaps it's just as well. Thank you for opening this Lost History file with me. If you enjoyed it, please like, share and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel, the link is in the description.